Hello everybody, Blue Dooley, and in this video we're starting a new project. We're starting a RC Everyday shop truck build, although I'm not entirely doing a shop truck, but I have his shop truck chassis. And I also have a RC four-wheel drive transmission already installed. Now the RC Everyday shop truck kits are just frame rails, cross members, and some mounts. There's no hardware, there's no body, and they are designed so you can build them pretty much however you want. Leaf spring in the rear, IFS in the front is kind of what he intended the truck to be, a two-wheel drive setup, but I've seen some guys do four-wheel drive versions of these. I'm going for a Lil Red Express. So my shop truck's going to be a bit more of a hot rod pickup than shop truck. So it does come with some really nice 3D printed parts, cross members, transmission mount, the front transmission mount and the motor mount, as well as these front suspension points, suspension hangers, I guess. They're designed to use touring car chassis parts and 80 millimeter shock, scale shock. And the prints are really nice. I forget exactly what they are printed out of, but they have a nice finish on them. Laser cut chassis rails, but you do need all of your own hardware, and you pretty much have to source all of the parts that you want to make it into a running vehicle. So I am really pleased with the quality of his chassis rails and its 3D prints. I'm, as I mentioned, going with a Lil Red Express. So for those who are unfamiliar with it, the Lil Red Express was either a 78 or a 79 half-ton Dodge short bed step side with a 360 cubic inch engine in it and a 3-speed automatic, exhaust pipes, stacks, and at the time it was actually the world's fastest production pickup truck. Also, oddly enough, since it didn't have smog equipment on it, it also got 13 miles to the gallon way back in the 70s, and everything with smog equipment was struggling to get 8. So that's a fun little fact. I'll throw an image up here of one. I'm sure I can find an image of one. So I'm going a little bit more hot rod than shop truck. Now the kit is designed to run either an RC four-wheel drive axle or a boom racing axle. So I do have a RC four-wheel drive K44 axle, and I have some RC four-wheel drive white wagon wheels, which are not going to stay white. And these are actually the Tamiya racing semi-truck tires on here. They don't quite fit the rim because apparently the racing semi doesn't use a 1.7 wheel, and they're a little too short. I want something with a little more sidewall. So yeah, unfortunately I'm not going to use these tires, and I'm not 100% off if I'm going to use these wheels or not. I had actually wanted to use the Kyosho Phaser wheels because they look really good, and it has kind of a classic bias ply tread pattern to it. I really like the way the tread pattern looks on these tires, but again, these are also far too short. Now for suspension, I'm actually working on designing up an entirely 3D printable front end. But I tried to keep most of my measurements the same as the parts that come with the kit. So mine are not quite as tall, and the main structure isn't quite as thick, but the width of where the suspension arms mount here and here is the same. So what I've designed up is what's basically a Mustang 2 front end. It's very loosely based on the Mustang 2 front end, which is basically a suspension kit designed to put a coilover system on, a coilover shock on older vehicles. I've seen them on Mustangs, Camaros, Mopar, pickup trucks. So basically it's just kind of a universal kit to put a coilover shock, more performance front end on those older vehicles. Get that slid on there, and then we'll kind of hold that up so you can see how much smaller and lower profile my parts are compared to parts that come with the kit. So yeah, the other thing I'm trying to do is here in the center I need to put some mounts, as I'm going to try to put a more scale steering system in it. And after I kind of get most of these finalized, I'm going to also offer it in a couple of different ride heights. Just kind of depends on how this first version goes. So that's for the front end. And then on the rear end, I have some 4-link mounts, which are not a triangulated 4-link. What I'm actually designing is a parallel 4-bar, and then I'll have a panhard bar going up to the chassis. So just a very simple 3D printed mount, bolts to the bottom of the K44 axle from RC 4-wheel drive, and yeah, I'll put 2 links close together. And then I had some smaller mounts, but I didn't really particularly care for them, so I actually made a much more robust mount for my 4-bar setup. I even put a couple speed holes here in the brace. This is probably a little chunky, but I'd rather have it be a little overbuilt than underbuilt. Let's see here. Best way to do this so you guys can see it, I imagine, would be to bolt it in. I'm just going to pick a random hole here and screw it in. Come on, let go. All right. So that's what it's going to look like on the chassis. Now these are tall enough, if you want, you can actually mount them on this part of the chassis, as I kind of want them to be as flexible as I can make them. That way you can change your ride height and still keep the bars parallel, as that's the way this kind of suspension is going to work. So the front end, what I'm going to use is actually got a Red Cat Racing RDS steering knuckle, and then I got the pivot balls and all of the rod ends for the RDS. Again, I'm trying to do a little more scale front suspension. So the rear arm is going to be very much like the Mustang 2 front end. The coilover is going to bolt through the main part of the arm, and then the rod end shares the same bolt. Not 100% if this is the way I'm going to keep it or not, but it's kind of the way I've designed it up first. And then the upper arm, I need to do a little more trimming to, but again, simple bolt through it, put the rod end on here, and then the screws go into the main suspension point from there. Let me put this together. You can kind of get a better look at it. Again, not all these parts aren't 100% finalized, and I am going to, after I do some tweaks to them, I will email Josh at RC Everyday and send him the files, because I'd like him to try bolting regular apparently I didn't put the shock hoop on that one, or ball joint on that shock. That's all right. That's all right. We're still kind of test fitting stuff. So I am going to send him the files so he can print them out and try them out with regular touring car front ends. Just to give him and anybody else with these kits a little more variety in suspension they can use. Now, these are the Yeah Racing coilovers. They are a 50 or a 52 millimeter shock, depending on how you build them. They got two different rod ends in them. Super adjustable, and if I understand the correct directions correctly, you can actually put a special piston in here, and you can change the piston settings without taking the shock apart. So you actually take the coil spring off, push the rod end in, and then twist it one way or the other, and you can actually change the piston's valving without taking the shock apart, which is kind of cool. However, this collar is a little wider than I had thought it would be, so my upper arm doesn't quite clear this collar. But that's an easy enough fix. I just need to adjust my file a little bit. I also don't have a long enough countersunk bolt on that bottom, so the shock's a little bound up too. Like I said, I think my arms do need a little bit of adjusting. So this video probably won't be super long. Red Cat, I'll show you the part number. Ball cup set, 16 pieces. You're wondering what I am using. And the reason I went with Red Cat is, well, that hauler really kind of impressed me. So I have decided to use Red Cat parts. However, any parts you want to use should work. I mean, it's a very basic setup here. And actually it looks like the RDS actually has some offset ones So that'll allow me to, or you to customize the caster a little bit. Let's see, we need that one. Oops. And I should have left that apart so I could put that end on. So the 3D parts here probably will not be available on any of my pages until I kind of finalize the arms a little bit more here. There we go. If that'll work a little bit better. Not really. Maybe we'll just go the other way with that, just to get the collar out of the way. And I do still need to make the rear shock mounts for this suspension setup. So I got the front end put together, and I have the body precariously balanced on the chassis right now at the moment. So I will grab the camera and get you in a little closer. I'm actually really surprised. I didn't do much measuring. I just kind of eyeballed everything. So I need to narrow the front up a little bit so it'll match the rear axle. But geometry wise, I'm actually pretty happy with it. Plus I think narrowing those arms up a little bit will allow me to get a little more strength in that lower arm. And that'll be a good thing. So let me show you the truck body here. I'll put a link in the description to the guy I downloaded the file from off of Cults 3D and printed it out. His bodies are designed to go on a 3D printed chassis. So the interior I'm going to have to modify a little bit. So if I want the doors to open on this cab, I need to change the interior. So the interior comes all the way out to the side of the body. But I also need to, I might not have the doors open, but I want the hood to open, so I need to slice the hood out and then glue the body together, of course. So let me come around to the other side and grab the camera. So this is a 79 Dodge cab with a 72 step-side bed, as he doesn't have a Lil Red Express body, but I think for what I'm doing, it's actually going to look pretty darn good. The only thing I think I'm really going to struggle with is finding a proper tire. I want a street tire, but I don't want a really low profile tire, as I'd kind of like to keep this build looking like it was built in the 80s or 80s aesthetic. So I am really happy with the suspension. So we'll get the cab off and the bed off, because like I said, they're just sitting there right now, and we'll look at that front end a little closer. So get you a shot of the grill here. The 79 went to dual headlights. The 78 just had the single headlight. That's the biggest difference I can see in the bodies. So here's the front suspension. Like I said, I need to narrow up my arms a little bit, but running just a rod end out here essentially gives me drift car amounts of steering angle. Almost drift car amounts of steering angle. like I said, I think bringing these in a little bit, I'll have to open up here a little bit so those shock collars clear a little better. And that lower arm, bringing all of that in will make the shock a little more vertical. And I might have to actually shorten the shock towers just a little bit to get the ride height up a little bit, as I don't want it a low rider. But I might save this one and then copy it and then shorten it on a second version. So let's grab the rear end here. There we go. So I need to take about the tread block out of my suspension arms. Yeah, I need to take 5 millimeters out of my suspension arms. So that'll be pretty easily done. The cross member, I think, is pretty much finished. And again, these particular 4-link mounts, the holes are a little wallowed out. They're just going to bolt to the chassis. Like I said, depending on what you're building, how long you want your suspension arms to be, you can bolt them here and then run longer arms. I'm going to go with a short parallel 4-bar setup. But yeah, these allow you 2 sets of adjustment. You can do the bottom and middle hole, or you can do the top and the other middle hole, and that'll kind of give you a little bit of range of motion. The shocks, probably what I'm going to do is I will use the stock shock locations here on the outside, and I'll just bend up a bracket, and then the shocks will sit behind the axle. And then of course we'll have one panhard mount over to the chassis. The other one does not have anything. So I will need to make the panhard mount, which won't take terribly long at all, to get that fabbed up in the CAD program. The longest part will actually be narrowing these suspension arms up a little bit. But that's kind of going to be a short video, as like I said, I'm just really kind of getting started on this. As soon as I get these arms, well, I'll get them adjusted tonight, and then I will email Josh the file so he can try it on one of his builds if he wants. And I'll also have the panhard mount for the rear finished before I send him all that. So all of these files I'm going to have on my Cults 3D page, and considering how many hours I have in this so far, these aren't going to be free. I'm going to charge probably $5 for the front end and all the rear suspension links, and then you'll just have to source your shocks, hardware, and whatever steering knuckles you want to run. Or you can skip printing the arms and then just run the Tamiya arms or drift car arms that go on these brackets. Like I said, the width is the same, so my suspension arms should fit on these brackets, and so other suspension arms should fit on my brackets. Like I said, I'm really happy with the way this came out. It just needs a little more tweaking, and I think it'll be good to good for other people to download. But that is going to do it for this video. As always, click like and subscribe so you can see more content. Click the like button, that really helps the channel out. And leave me a comment what you think of my front suspension here. Of course, leave me a comment if you're looking forward to seeing a Lil Red Express build or you're a fan of something else. But that's going to do it for this video, and we'll catch you in the next one.